The village of Harrowfield had always been quiet. Too quiet, according to travelers who passed through. The silence wasn't peaceful, but heavy, like a pressure that sat on the chest. No birds sang in the trees. No wind rustled the crops. Even the footsteps of villagers seemed unnaturally soft, as if the soil itself had learned to muffle sounds. For 16-year-old Mara, the silence was all she'd ever known. But even she felt something wrong beneath it, like a heartbeat hiding under the earth. Elders warned children never to wander outside after sundown, claiming wolves roamed the farmlands. But the truth was far worse. At night, shadows gathered at the edge of the village. Thin, pale figures missing their tongues, their jaws hanging open, their throats carved smooth like polished stone. They never made a sound. And yet somehow, in the deep hours of darkness, Mara often heard whispers outside her window. Whispers in voices that belonged to living people. Voices that should have been asleep. Voices that didn't belong to the tongueless at all, but mimicked the speech of those they planned to claim next. Mara's father, Rowan, had once spoken freely about the creatures, back when he still believed the village could be saved from them. He had been a historian, obsessed with tracing Harrowfield's past. The tongueless were not always this way, he told Mara when she was little. They were once the villagers themselves, betrayed, punished, and transformed. But before he could finish his research, the council forbade him from digging deeper. 2 weeks later, he vanished. No body, no trace, only silence thicker than before. Everyone whispered that the tongueless had taken him as a warning. Mara refused to accept it. She spent nights reading his hidden notes, discovering horrifying patterns. Every decade, exactly 13 villagers disappeared, and every disappearance began the same way, with a person hearing their own voice whispering to them in the dark. Mara had never heard her own voice outside her window until last night, when something perfectly mimicked her soft laugh. The realization chilled her. The tongueless didn't steal tongues to stop speech. They stole voices to lure their next victims, imitating them until the real person finally stepped into the dark. By the next morning, Mara felt certain she had been marked. As she walked through the village square, her unease grew. Every villager avoided eye contact, speaking only in short, clipped murmurs, as if afraid their voices might be stolen too. Some even pressed their hands to their throats when she passed, a silent warning she didn't understand. At the bakery, the elderly baker, Hessa, pulled her aside. "You heard it, didn't you?" she whispered. Mara nodded and the woman paled. "Then you must leave before nightfall. Your father tried to fight the harvest. They took him because he knew too much." Mara's breath caught. Harvest. That was the word Rowan had scribbled dozens of times in his notes, always circled in red. "What is the harvest, Hessa?" The baker shook her head, tears forming. "It is when they reclaim what was stolen from them. Blood, voice, memory. They take from us what we once took from them." But before Mara could ask more, a deep silence fell, thicker, colder. The baker's eyes widened in terror. She mouthed one last warning. "They're listening." That night, Mara packed her father's journals, intending to flee before darkness fully settled. But as she approached the village gate, she found it sealed with thick iron chains. Chains that hadn't been there that morning. A guard stepped forward, his expression empty. "No one leaves during the harvest," he said, though his lips barely moved, as if speaking caused him pain. Mara realized something unsettling. The guard's voice wasn't his. She had heard that smooth, hollow tone before, outside her window. She stepped back, heart pounding. The tongueless had already infiltrated the village, wearing voices like masks. As she ran home, shadows shifted behind her. Doors slammed, windows shuttered. It was as if every house knew the harvest had begun. When she reached her front door, she found a message carved into the wood. 3 words, jagged and uneven, as if scratched by trembling hands. "Run before echoes." Mara froze. Echoes, her father had warned about them. Echoes were not spirits but stolen voices, wandering ahead of the tongueless, calling victims by name. And now one of those echoes was whispering behind her, soft and familiar. "Mara, "Come here." Mara sprinted inside and bolted the door behind her, though she knew wood and metal meant nothing to the Tongueless. She lit every candle she could find, casting trembling circles of light across the room. Shadows twitched at the edges, stretching unnaturally long, as if trying to slip closer. She opened her father's journal to the final pages, those he wrote the night before he vanished. The ink was smeared, the handwriting frantic. They were silenced for speaking the truth, cut out, erased, buried beneath us. But silence does not forget. It grows hungry. Mara felt her chest tighten. A drawing filled the next page. Dozens of tongueless figures rising from the ground, mouths open, voices leaking from them like smoke. Her father had scrawled a final note beside it. They do not want revenge. They want replacement. Suddenly, the candles flickered out one by one. The whispering began again, this time hundreds of voices overlapping. Some she recognized, others impossibly old. They surrounded the house, calling her name with perfect imitation. And then, from deep within the chorus, she heard her father's voice say gently, "Open the door, Mara. Let us take your silence." Mara pressed her back against the door, her breath shallow and quick. The house trembled as if the voices themselves carried weight. Every window rattled. The air thickened with a cold so sharp it felt like needles brushing her skin. She forced herself to read the next journal page, hoping her father had left a way out. He had drawn a symbol, a circle of 13 lines radiating outward like a sun. Under it, he wrote, "The silence seal. Break it, and the harvest ends." Mara scanned the room, desperate. Then she saw it, carved into the wooden floor beneath the rug she had played on as a child. The same symbol, hidden her entire life. As she knelt to touch it, the whispers outside rose into a violent chorus. The voices began slamming against the walls, bending the wood inward, as though trying to fold the house in half. Her father's voice roared above the others, no longer gentle, but commanding, "Do not touch the seal." Mara hesitated. If he didn't want her to break it, then what had he been trying to say? She leaned closer, and the center of the symbol began to pulse with faint, living light. The light grew brighter, illuminating the room in a pale, ghostly glow. Mara reached out, and the moment her fingertips touched the seal, the world around her vanished. She stood in a gray, endless field, surrounded by the Tongueless. Hundreds of them, pale bodies swaying like reeds in dead wind. None attacked her. Instead, they stared with hollow eyes full of something worse than hatred, sorrow. A figure approached from the fog. Her father, his mouth hung open, tongue missing, throat carved smooth. Yet she heard him speak inside her mind. "We did not choose this." Images flooded her vision. Villagers long ago cutting out tongues, burying the victims alive under the fields to keep their secrets hidden. The Tongueless were not monsters. They were prisoners of a curse born from betrayal. "Break the seal," he said. "End our suffering. End yours." As Mara felt herself being pulled back to reality, her father gave her one final look, not of horror, but of pleading. When she blinked, she was back in her house, the whispers now shrieking her name as the walls cracked and splintered. The seal pulsed beneath her hands like a beating heart. Mara braced herself as the house buckled. The front door bent inward, wooden fibers snapping like bones. The voices had grown monstrous, no longer imitations, but anguished screams of the damned. She slammed her hands against the glowing seal. The light flared, burning her skin. Black veins spread across the floorboards like roots. The Tongueless were now inside the house, dozens of them crawling from the shadows, limbs jerking unnaturally, jaws opening in silent agony. One reached for her, its fingertips cold as grave soil, and for a moment, she saw the human it once had been. A young girl, terrified, begging without sound. Mara's heart twisted. She pressed harder on the seal. The symbol responded, splitting open like a cracked stone, revealing swirling white light beneath. A wind roared upward, pulling everything toward it. Shadows, dust, even the Tongueless themselves. They clung to the walls, their bodies peeling away like ash. Their faces remained calm, accepting, hopeful. Outside, the sky tore apart with a thunderous scream as the ancient curse began unraveling. Mara felt her body lifting, drawn toward the light as voices cried out. Not in torment, but in relief. The wind intensified, pulling at Mara's hair and clothes. The Tongueless were being lifted into the glowing vortex, one by one, dissolving into sparks of silver light. Their suffering was ending, finally. But the house itself was crumbling, beams snapping, roof collapsing inward. Mara held onto the seal, anchoring herself. A voice whispered behind her ear, a voice she recognized instantly. Her father. You must let go. The seal needs a sacrifice. A living voice to replace the silence. Mara grit her teeth. I'm not dying, she whispered. There has to be another way. The wind roared louder, shaking the foundation. The seal split wider, the light almost blinding. Her father appeared in the glow, reaching toward her, not to pull her in, but to steady her. You are not meant to die, Mara. You are meant to speak, for all of us. A warmth spread through her chest. She understood. She didn't need to give her life. She needed to give her voice. So she inhaled deeply, ignoring the pain, and screamed. A raw, powerful scream filled with every fear, every truth, every memory. The vortex swallowed her voice whole, and suddenly, the storm went still. Silence fell, but not the cursed, heavy silence that had plagued the village for centuries. This silence felt clean, peaceful. The light faded, and Mara collapsed onto the floor. When she opened her eyes, the Tongueless were gone. Not dissolved, not erased, freed. The air shimmered softly with silver dust before settling like snow. Outside, dawn was breaking for the first time in years without a single whisper in the wind. Mara rose shakily and stepped out into the quiet village. Doors opened. Villagers peeked out, confused but alive. The darkness had lifted. As she walked to the village square, she felt an ache in her throat. Her voice was gone, completely, but in its place was something stronger, a strange warmth that pulsed like hope. She knelt beside the old well, placing her palm over her heart. Her silence had saved them. A gentle breeze stirred, not a whisper of danger, but a promise. And then she heard it, not with her ears, but deep in her mind. Dozens of voices, calm, grateful, finally free, speaking as one. Thank you, Mara. We can rest now. And for the first time, the silence felt alive.